The courtroom murmured with tension as Justice Barrett Simmons glanced over his glasses at the man standing alone at the defendant's table. His name was Elijah Carr, and he didn't have a lawyer. Just a navy suit worn at the elbows and a stack of files clutched in his hands. Across from him stood Daniel Royce, the senior legal counsel for Continental Trust Bank, crisp in his bespoke suit, confident in his power. "Representing yourself, Mr. Carr?" Judge Simmons asked, tapping his gavel with a note of amusement. "This should be interesting." Elijah didn't flinch. He held the judge's gaze and said calmly, "I'm not here to entertain, Your Honor. I'm here to win." 6 months earlier, Elijah had been standing on the front porch of the home his mother had spent a lifetime paying for. It was a modest place, white paint fading, porch swing creaking in the warm Alabama wind. It had belonged to his grandmother before her, a house built with grit and held with dignity. That morning, a red-stamped eviction notice was clutched in his hand. Final notice. 14 days to vacate. His mother, Gloria Carr, had passed the year before, a heart attack taking her in her sleep. Elijah remembered her smile the day she made the last mortgage payment, waving the statement in the air like a flag of victory. It was theirs finally. No more banks, no more late-night shifts at the diner, no more sacrifices. And now they were taking it. He rushed inside, flipping through his mother's metal filing cabinet. Tax receipts, paid mortgage statements, the deed all in perfect order. But then, tucked between folders, was a document he had never seen before, a second mortgage agreement, supposedly signed 2 years prior. The signature was her name but wrong. The curves were shakier, the angle unfamiliar. Something was off. Elijah called the bank. Hours on hold. Transferred, disconnected. Finally, a voice on the line. Foreclosure Department, Continental Trust. "I'm calling about an eviction notice for 218 Glenwood," he said, trying to keep calm. "There's a mistake. My mother's mortgage was paid in full. I have the deed. The account is in default," the woman replied coolly. "The second mortgage was taken out 2 years ago. It was never repaid. The foreclosure is final." "That's impossible," Elijah said, his voice rising. "My mother never took out a second loan. I'm looking at the documents. That signature isn't hers. Maybe you weren't aware of her financial situation," the woman snapped. "File a request with legal. It won't stop the eviction." The line went dead. Elijah stared at the photo of his mother on the mantel, her in a sun hat, laughing, holding a trowel in her garden. She believed that house was safe. He clenched his jaw. Someone was lying. He drove to the bank, where he was met by Martin Kessler, the branch manager, who barely glanced at his documents. "People like you need to learn the system wasn't built for you," Kessler said with a smirk. "You default, you lose. That's the story. That signature's a forgery," Elijah snapped. "And you know it. If you think that," Kessler said, "hire a lawyer. But you've got 2 weeks. Better act fast." He couldn't afford a lawyer. He'd lost his job at the automotive plant after the latest round of layoffs. Part-time janitorial shifts at the rec center barely covered groceries. Legal aid turned him away. Too full. Too hopeless. He sat alone at the kitchen table night after night, poring through mortgage statutes and fraud cases, borrowing books from the library. He couldn't sleep. The thought of strangers walking through his mother's garden, tearing up the porch swing, dumping her things on the curbit, lit a fire in his chest that refused to die. The stay of eviction he filed was denied. The judge refused to hear his claim without a lawyer. When Elijah returned home, another notice had been taped to the door. The sheriff was coming in 10 days. That night, he went to a community meeting, trying to plead his case to Councilwoman Joan Talbert. "I sympathize," she said, smiling in that distant way politicians smile when they want you to leave. "But the bank followed protocol. You need to move on. This isn't just a house," Elijah said. "It's my family's legacy." "Legacy doesn't pay bills," she replied. So, he wasn't a son. He was a man being erased. He stayed up until dawn that night, studying mortgage law, drawing up timelines, cross-referencing signature patterns. The second mortgage lacked the proper notary certification. The handwriting was inconsistent. The transfer document between lenders was missing a required endorsement. It was a crack, and cracks meant pressure points. He filed for discovery. The judge sighed, but approved it. 3 days later, his bank account was frozen. Utilities bounced. His car was repossessed. The bank claimed it was routine fraud investigation, but he knew better. They were pushing him. "You've made enemies," Martin Kessler sneered when Elijah confronted him again. "And you made a mistake," Elijah replied. "You messed with the wrong house." He found help in the unlikeliest places. Miss Ruby, an elderly volunteer at the rec center, handed him a yellowed folder of old contacts retired notaries, former bank clerks. One of them, a nervous woman named Cassandra Beach, admitted she'd notarized the signature without Gloria Carr present. "They told me she was sick," Cassandra said, her hands trembling. "Said it was a formality." "It's fraud," Elijah whispered. "I'll testify," she said quietly. "But they'll come for me, too." They did. 2 days later, her apartment was broken into. Her records were stolen. She called Elijah in tears. Linda Morales, a former compliance officer at the bank, contacted him after seeing his case mentioned in a community newsletter. She handed over confidential emails between Kessler and Royce talking about how to fast-track foreclosures in low litigation risk zones. Black neighborhoods, families without means, people they thought wouldn't fight back. With Cassandra's affidavit and Linda's emails, Elijah filed a motion for emergency review. The court scheduled a hearing. 2 men in black suits waited outside the motel Elijah had scraped together enough money to rent. "You should drop the case," one said. "The settlement's generous. Take it and walk." "I don't walk," Elijah replied. He brought everything to court: affidavits, bank memos, forged documents, and the original deed signed with pride by Gloria Carr. Royce objected at every turn, but the judge listened. When the judge heard the audio recording Linda had managed to retrieve Kessler admitting in a conference call that the foreclosure will go through before they can fight it, the mood shifted. "This isn't just a mistake," Elijah said. "This was a strategy." The courtroom buzzed. "I was supposed to fold," he continued. "I was supposed to be too broke, too tired, too small. But I'm still here." Judge Simmons pounded his gavel. "Foreclosure is nullified. Further investigation into Continental Trust practices is warranted." Elijah exhaled for the first time in months. Roy stormed out. Linda lost her job. Cassandra changed apartments. Elijah slept on a friend's couch for a week while utilities were restored. But the house was safe. Continental Trust was forced to halt dozens of foreclosures. The whistleblower report became a news headline, and Elijah, once alone at the defendant's table, became the face of resistance. He turned down the settlement. "My silence isn't for sale." Months later, he stood on the front porch, looking out over the street, sun on his face. The same porch his mother once swept each morning before work. He nearly lost it all, but he didn't, because sometimes the most dangerous man in the room isn't the one with the biggest law firm. It's the one who won't stop fighting.